Hello, my name is RJ Adams. I'm a writer, and today I would like to read a story I wrote a few years ago. It's it's well, it's a romance, but it's pretty cheesy. It's not really. It's similar to other stories that have been told before, but something that came to me a while back, and I wrote it down. So I wanted to read that. I didn't go back and edit it. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is and read it how I wrote it. This is a free story I'm putting out there for the world to use. However, um, if anyone's interested, go right ahead and do something with it. That's fine. I'm just telling it to share it with the world. It's called Michael and Andy, a love story. Once upon a time, on a bright, sunny Sunday morning, an 11-year-old boy was on his way to Sunday morning service with his grandmother. Michael, the boy, dressed up in his nicest clothes, recalled that they had been going to service every week for as long as he could remember. After the service was over, Michael's grandmother always took him out to dinner before taking him back home to his family. At home, Michael had one brother and two sisters who were all younger than him. In fact, Michael was older than all of his cousins on his mother's side, which was both a delight and an upset to him. Of course, he liked being the oldest in his generation, but he didn't like to be the first to make mistakes through life so that the rest of his generation could learn from and avoid them. Despite that, he was pretty happy. As Michael was growing up, he started to have certain feelings about himself, until one day he finally realized that what these feelings were. He realized that he was attracted to the same sex. He never told anyone about his feelings for years because he was afraid of how his family and friends would react. Whenever someone asked him why he didn't have a girlfriend, he would just tell them that he hadn't found the right one yet. Then one day, when Michael was 18, he went to a restaurant. He had gone alone because he liked to spend time by himself once in a while. It wasn't a fancy place, but it had a nice, quiet atmosphere. As he sat down at a table next to a window, a waiter approached and handed Michael a menu. The waiter asked Michael what he would like to drink while he decided on what he wanted to eat. Michael looked up and saw the most beautiful blue eyes he had ever seen. Michael was at a loss for words as he just stared into the waiter's eyes. Finally, Michael caught hold of himself and told the waiter that he just wanted a glass of water. So the waiter brought Michael a glass of water and set it down in front of him and left to tend other customers. When the waiter returned to take Michael's order, Michael told him that he didn't feel well all of a sudden and had changed his mind about eating. The waiter asked Michael if he would be all right, and Michael told him yes. Michael then left the restaurant and went home. The next day, Michael went back to apologize to the waiter for leaving like he did. When he went into the restaurant and saw the same waiter, he got nervous. Reluctantly, he got up the nerve to speak to the waiter. As Michael approached the waiter, he saw those same beautiful blue eyes. Keeping hold of his courage, Michael went up to the waiter and apologized for the day before. Michael wouldn't hear of it. Or the waiter wouldn't hear of it. He told Michael to sit anywhere he wanted because he was going to let Michael have anything he wanted on the house. So, somewhat awestruck, Michael sat down at the same table he had the previous day. Then the waiter asked if he could join Michael. Michael was not about to refuse such a welcome but strange offer. So the waiter sat down across from Michael and introduced himself. He told Michael that his name was Andrew, but asked Michael to call him Andy for short. Then Michael, not wanting to sound ungrateful or anything for Andy's hospitality, asked Andy if he was risking getting in trouble with his boss by sitting with him. Well, it turned out that Andy was actually the owner of the restaurant. After that, the two just seemed to hit it off. They ended up talking for quite a while. Michael was starting to feel more at ease with Andy. Then somehow the subject of sex came up. By this point, Michael felt like he could talk about anything with Andy. So Michael told Andy that he was gay. Then Andy got up from his seat, went over to Michael's side of the table, and sat down beside him. Then Andy told Michael that he too was gay. Michael could not believe his ears. Then the sudden burst of news filled Michael's head and heart with so many questions for Andy. He felt such a sensation of relief as well as happiness, gladness, and fulfillment. Well, as they talked a little bit more, Michael was soon feeling sleepy. He looked at his watch and realized that he and Andy had been talking for 3 hours. So Michael told Andy that he had to get along. Andy didn't want their good time to end, so he invited Michael to spend the night at his house. Michael wasn't sure if he should, but Andy assured him that it would be all right. So Michael agreed and went to use the phone to call his parents. After that, they left. After they got to Andy's house and got relaxed, Michael asked Andy if he could take a shower. Andy went to get Michael a towel and showed him where the bathroom was. Michael went into the bathroom, turned the shower on, stripped off his clothes, and stepped into the shower. After a couple minutes, Andy called to Michael and told him that he had brought him some pajamas to wear. Michael thanked him. The next thing Michael knew, the shower curtain flew open and there stood Andy wearing nothing but his birthday suit. Michael just stood there staring at Andy's beautiful nakedness. Without waiting any longer for a reply from Michael, Andy proceeded to step into the shower with Michael. Michael wasn't sure what to expect. He had never actually been with anyone before, much less taken a shower with anyone. But he was willing to go ahead and see what happened. All he could do was stand there staring at Andy, shaking from nervousness. Andy, seeing how uncomfortable Michael looked, put his arms around Michael and just held him as tight as he could. This made Michael feel a little more comfortable. Michael stopped shaking and put his arms around Andy as well. The two just stood there holding each other for a few minutes. After finally letting go of each other long enough to get out of the shower, they dried off and proceeded to Andy's bedroom. Both were still naked. Obviously. As Michael had forgotten all about the pajamas, Andy went to the other side of his bed and lifted up the blanket, inviting Michael to join him this time. Michael laid himself down next to Andy and they cuddled up for a little while. Then Andy began to kiss Michael gently at first until it became more passionate. Michael was really feeling calmer by then. He was still a little uneasy, but Andy knew how to get him to relax. I'm not going to, and this is in parentheses, I'm not going to tell you what happened after that. You'll have to use your own imagination. Basically, Michael lost his virginity that night. There you go. He was glad to have lost it to Andy. Well, as the years passed, Michael and Andy were still seeing each other. And their relationship was as strong as ever. It was so strong, in fact, that Michael had decided to tell his family about his sexuality and about Andy. Michael's family took it better than he thought they would. His parents told him that as long as he was happy, then that was all that mattered. A couple years later, Andy bought Michael a gift. It was not just an ordinary gift, but something very special. Andy went to Michael's parents' house where Michael was visiting. Andy went inside into the living room where Michael and his family were sitting and talking. He gave Michael's mother a hug and shook his father's hand. Then he went over to Michael. Michael stood up and gave Andy a hug. Then Andy told everyone that he had something to say to Michael and he wanted all of them to hear it. He asked Michael to sit back down, and Michael obliged. Andy took a small jewelry box from his pocket, opened it, and took out a ring that was inside. Then he knelt down in front of Michael and proposed. Michael couldn't believe it. He was so excited. With a happy tear in his eye, he said yes. Andy placed the ring on Michael's finger and hugged him with all his might. They were married a month later. A couple years later, Andy started getting ill. He had gone to all kinds of specialists, but none of them could figure out exactly what was wrong with him. Then his illness took a turn for the worse and he had to be hospitalized. The doctors ran all their tests and finally came up with a diagnosis. It seemed that Andy had a very rare disease that hadn't been seen in years. The doctors estimated that Andy only had a few days left to live, a week at the most. This was very upsetting news, especially for Michael. He couldn't deal with not being able to do something. He blamed himself. Andy was the world to him. Andy was the only reason that Michael was so happy. Andy was the best friend that Michael had ever had. He didn't want to live without Andy. Michael decided to commit suicide so that he and Andy could always be together in life and in death. He told Andy that what he was planning to do, but Andy talked him out of it. The next thing they knew, they were hugging each other with tears in their eyes. Michael stood up and went to the other side of Andy's bed and sat in a chair. Not too long after that, they both had fallen asleep. Later that night, Andy died in his sleep. When Michael discovered this, he started crying with every ounce of emotion he had. For the first time in his life, Michael felt true emptiness and loneliness in his heart. His body felt cold and alone. He wanted more than ever to end his life right then and there. But he bravely held on to what Andy had told him. Andy had told Michael that life was too precious for him to just throw it away, and suicide was a permanent answer to a temporary problem. Michael had his whole life ahead of him, even though Andy didn't. Michael never stopped loving Andy and never forgot what Andy told him. He kept memories of Andy in his heart for the rest of his life. Michael never fell in love with anyone else because he wanted to save his love for Andy whenever he would die. Michael lived to be a very wealthy 85-year-old man. When he died, he and Andy happily lived out their eternal lives together forever. And that's the end of that. Like I said, it's a generic story. There are probably other stories similar to that out there, but that is the one I came up with, and I didn't want to edit it, like I said, but it's free for anyone to, I could have added a lot of more details, but like I said, I didn't want to go through the hassle. But anyone else, feel free. And I guess that's, if you have any questions or comments, let me know what you think, and I will see you in another video. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.